What's going on, guys? Welcome back to UnOrdinary review and discussion. This week we are talking about episode 269. Honestly, I always say this. I know that I've had my gripes with some of the latest UnOrdinary chapters, but this episode was just really, really good. It was really good, and if you know, you know. If you know why this episode was great, why it was so much fun to just read and react to. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a second. So, episode 269 starts off with John just in his dorm changing, thinking back to the conversation he had with Sarah about losing his ability, thinking on her word, back when she said, it's easy to take certain things for granted, but when they do disappear, you're given a new perspective. And he really thinks about her words, a new perspective. Now, we don't exactly see much of John reflecting on that in this episode. I think it might be possible that it branches off to next episode, and I'll go into why at the end. So when John then starts thinking about how he rejected his ability all this time, but now that it's gone, a part of him does feel empty, and he does start to think, if he's missing it. And actually, I could talk about it right now. So, that is a new perspective. Like, John is starting to think, like, wait, am I missing my ability? Because even last episode, he, mentions that when he got injected, he felt kind of relieved that he didn't have to worry about his ability now. So, there's that. So, I think we will see a little bit more on John getting that new perspective in the coming episodes, though. Next episode, specifically. Outside in the hall, though, Remy, Blake, and Ison are hanging out, and they're gonna leave to get food. Now, as they walk past John's door, though, Blake is the first person to think of John, and he walks over to go invite him. And Remy, even seeing this, he kind of looks back and like, oh, Blake's knocking on John's door. Normally, this is kind of something we would see Remy do, but it was kind of like a nice refresher, way back in season 1, where Blake started to try and make an effort with John. And, now that things are on a more neutral, on a more casual, friendly, not 100% friends, John even, mentions that in this episode, but it's kind of nice to see, Blake's trying again. And, hopefully we'll see, John try to make an effort with Blake at some point. Maybe John will be like, hey, I'm going to go for a run. Do you want to come with? Because, Blake likes going on runs too. Anyway, that's completely unnecessary. So, he knocks on Nero's door and, just tells Nero, hey, we're going to go get food. You want to come? And John doesn't really hesitate. There's no, dots or anything. He just replies with, sure. And he comes with them. Which, again, it's really nice to see. John clearly wasn't going to do anything. It seems like he was just, going to hang out in his dorm. But instead, he just says, sure, I'll come with. And that's just nice. It's, It's more progress for John. It is really just more progress for John, and I love that. I love seeing John. I love seeing John make new friends, and I'm not the only person who loves seeing John make new friends. Anyway, so as they're walking around the town, Blake just checks up on John, asking if anyone's been giving him any trouble recently, and John just tells him he's been fine, that everyone's kept the secret pretty well. Ison then comments on the Spectre situation, and Ison then comments a little more offhandedly about the Spectre situation, just saying oh yeah, this is really crazy, man. And John even says with how goody they are, he's surprised that they haven't said anything to the authorities about Spectre. And the three of them are just immediately goody, really? And that's to be fair, they're not troublemaker. They are troublemakers, but they aren't necessarily goody either. They don't cause problems in public. They solve problems in public. But, if John knew everything he knew about, what's going on, he would probably be like, oh, this makes sense. Anyway, also, John actually cover this in a bit. Remy then comments that if they did tell the authorities, they would probably be in trouble for knowing too much, and basically tells John what she's been saying the whole time, that the authorities aren't as reliable as everyone believes. John immediately even then states that thinks to himself that she's the last person he would have expected that from. And after Blake comments too, John begins thinking that about why they're being so conscious, even reflecting on how he used to view them as being overly self-righteous, but then starts thinking that there has to be more to it than that. And John then asks how they can be so calm after realizing that they're being targeted by an organization like Spectre, and Blake even just says, they aren't the only thing out there. But before we can have time to reflect on that, William shows up. It's beautiful. It's so cute. So William just shows up trying to look for John and everything. John spots William like immediately. He's just like, that's my dad. Fuck, what is my dad doing here? William's just on his phone like trying to look for John. I assume with Find Your Friends, because he's like, I don't know how to use this. So William notices them, and seeing John with the trio, he immediately lights up because John made new friends. And it's so cute. We all love William. Like, whether or not you like John, whether or not you like Arlo, if you hate Remy, one thing we can all agree on, William is best dad. So, when John asks why William is here, he tells him, like, I heard you were in the hospital, so I came to check up on you. And, John then and then he asks John if John's hiding his ability again. Now, while John and William are talking a bit about him just showing up, Remy and Blake just, look at each other like his dad seems nice. Meanwhile, Ison is just like, William and then John? How? It's just really funny. It's really funny. So Remy then just, walks over to William, and John tells him, asks him hey, we're going to go get dinner. Do you want to come with? And while they're getting their food, assumably they break down the bare bones about why John was in the hospital and, what really happened, because he even mentions you guys were ambushed on a hike. I hope you guys are okay. Meanwhile, John is just embarrassed all the time, my dad's here. Embarrassing. So, William then asks about the ambush, and I don't believe that they clearly didn't tell him about the dampeners, because he does comment that they must have been really strong if you guys had a hard time with them. So, like I said, he probably knows the bare bones, just the bare bones, oh yeah, we were ambushed during the club thing and everything. It happened, while our group was separated. So he even then comments that it's possible John held himself back again, which he did at first. Ison even saying, he kind of got in Ison's face, and, Ison basically told him, you could have helped out, but you didn't. You didn't do anything, so stop blaming me. So William then asks if they know why they were ambushed, which they do, but they immediately cover up, and they kind of even backpedal a little bit to their comments that they said to John earlier about the authorities not being reliable. Ison comments, they're with the authorities now, so, they'll probably have an answer for us, soon. So, kind of covering up, making sure that, they don't slip up, make sure no one else really gets involved as much as they have to. Remy then comments that it's just important that everyone work together to protect the safe house. And William asks if that includes John, and Blake goes as far to say, I don't think we could have done it without him. And William just, looks at John and smiles. And they're right. They couldn't have done it without John. They would have been fucked without John, because John, warned them to begin with. So, William then asks him about the safe house, and Blake says that Remy came up with it, but then Remy says it was a group effort. But she also says you could even say that John was the one who shed light on the situation. And yeah, you could say that, Remy. You could say that. You could definitely say that. So, and that she then comments that they started to observe the school more and more, and they realized that it was something that was needed, even mentioning a few hiccups along the way. And then John even comments, a few hiccups is putting it nicely. So, William then says he's surprised that Wellston let this happen, complimenting that he thought that they would want them focusing on reaching their full potential, not the well-being of other students. Now, this is kind of in contradiction to what Cassandra told Vaughn about what was expected. Now, clearly, William is not a member of the authorities. He wouldn't really, have bearing on anything. But I think it is important to also remember that William does have experience with John about, what to expect in the society and the authorities and what they expect. William, I think also kind of has a firsthand knowledge of, people don't care. The authorities don't care about low tiers in UnOrdinary. They don't. Low tiers are, self-governed and everything. So I'm not saying that, William is more credible than Cassandra when it comes to, what the authorities inspect and everything. But even Cassandra did mention that, he only tells, he has this prepared. He's only telling, he only says what the higher ups want to hear. So, yeah, it kind of goes back to, Cassandra being we need people who, know how society run. We need people who, do this. When really all they really want is high tiers who are strong as they possibly can be, who will listen to what they have to say and will follow orders as they see fit. So, it's kind of interesting. This is, stuff that's, being told to us after, some other information gets told to us. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing because clearly, Cassandra's trying to do her best to get Vaughn out of that position. Meanwhile, we have someone like William who kind of knows what society is about, especially considering that they have his wife currently, assumedly his wife, Jane, John's mother, assumably. So, yeah, it's just, it's cool. It's interesting. So, he then asks if there was any pushback, and Blythe tells him that Vaughn was nothing but supportive of the idea. And William then even thinks to himself, this headmaster seems like a really interesting guy. And I honestly think, seeing William and Vaughn interact, I really want that to happen because I don't think Vaughn has really met Headmaster Vaughn. We know a lot of the early panels of John getting to Wellston were just him, just him meeting with Headmaster Vaughn and everything. So, but he then tells the group that the trio, Blake, Remy, and Ison, that they're ahead of his time and he wishes that he had one back in school. And, they just kind of smile at that because, it's a grown-up. It's a grown-up who, clearly they could have helped back then if they were around. But, he's just telling them, you kids are geniuses. You kids are great. You're doing great. And, that's just nice to hear sometimes. So, after dinner, Remy, kind of like Sarah way back when, tells William to let them all know when he's back in town again so they can get dinner. And they leave as they say goodbye to John. And then William tells John that he's got a nice group of friends. And, John tells William the truth. He basically says, we're not that close. We recently just got on speaking terms. And, William reassures John, hey, it's better late than never, son. And he even says, he was worried that John may still be blaming himself for everything that happened, which John has been a little bit. He still was holding himself back at times before everything. But, and, he held himself back at Rowden Hill, which kind of probably could have been avoided and handled better if he didn't hesitate at the beginning. He held himself when he was going up against the Rowden Royals, which ended up blowing up a little bit. But, again, he's been trying lately. He also mentions that it's good to hear that John's using his ability again. Well, ain't that a bitch? But, ultimately, William tells John that he's proud of him for stepping forward after all that's happened. And that's just a really nice way. It was just a really nice way to end the chapter. And as William is telling him this, John even kind of interrupts, he wants to tell his dad something. He kind of says, Dad, and then the chapter just ends with William telling him, I'm really proud of you, John. And, again, it's just so nice. It's just really nice seeing William around. And once again, Udo just showing us how good of a father William is to John. Kind of this is another contrast chapter, actually, to what happened last week with, us seeing Terrence's mom being kind of abusive to him and everything. And honestly, the whole time, William never blamed John for being weak. He never, from what we've seen, William never blamed John for like anything. William just kind of like raised his son, and when his son was crippled, William told him like, I'm gonna teach you how to fight and teach you how to throw hands so you know how to at least protect yourself. So yeah. And John was a little shit. When John got his ability, he was a little shit. From what we've seen, he never did anything against his dad. He did clearly threaten his dad a few times, but even after all that, William just still loves his son unconditionally. And this is why William's a god tier character, based on, from that tier list we, the Jokers, did way back when. This is why William's a god tier character. We all need parents like William. So, few more things before we wrap this up. Will John tell William about what really happened? I honestly do think it's possible, because John definitely doesn't want to keep lying. He doesn't want to keep covering up to his dad about the things that are going on. So he may just be like, Dad, I lost my ability. Now this could definitely backfire, because William could hear that. He could be like, oh my God, we need to tell someone, like, we need to bring this up. My son lost his ability. I don't think William would freak out like that, but William is definitely protective of John. And after hearing that what the authorities did to him, he may try and that may be the straw that broke the camel's back for him and everything, which could immediately blow up, because that would risk revealing that John lost his ability to the school if that news gets out. But it also makes William a target for Spectre as well, which everyone clearly wants to avoid, being like a dead horse. But anyone who knows about Spectre, so I definitely think it's more possible though, that John still covers up for now, which is just like thanks Dad, like I'm proud of you. But like I said last episode, may also be possible that they get ambushed this next episode, and John clearly can't do anything, and then William's like, oh my God, my son doesn't have his ability, what's going on now? The trio though, last one, so another little tidbit that I thought of is the trio is alone right now. The trio is walking back to Wellston right now. Possibly Cassandra shows up and starts questioning them as they're heading back. She is currently investigating. We don't know how much time has necessarily passed since everything, but I definitely do think it's possible that Cassandra just shows up like, hey, let's talk, you little bitches. So yeah. I don't think that, well, I said that about the last episode too, when Sarah was like, I have a couple ideas in mind, but that clearly didn't happen. So, for all we know, Uru can just, send us back to the dorms and everything. So, few more little tidbits that I said I would talk about briefly. Now, going back to, John getting a new perspective on everything. So, seems kind of like that was in reference to, him questioning if he loses his ability. But, again, I think we are going to get little bits of repeats with Sarah's cripple arc, where she realizes, how much she took her ability for granted. And, John even mentioned, like I said before, John mentioned that, he was relieved when he lost his ability, but now that it's gone, clearly something is up with John. Same old with that. So I wanted to mention one more thing. I can't remember what it was. So if I do remember, I will edit that in real quick. But hey guys, Post J here. I finally remembered what I wanted to talk about that I mentioned earlier in the episode, but forgot towards the end of the last recording. So real quick, final note, post points. So going back to me talking about if John knew everything that was happening and went on with the trio. Now, as we've seen with this whole Spectre situation, John can put things together. He is smart when it counts and when he needs to be. He was able to put everything together with Terrence. Granted, that was aura related because he did sense Terrence's aura and everything. And he realized, oh my gosh, Terrence was the one who was following us way back when, and he connected all that to Sarah, and went on the route and trip because he put everything together, which ultimately did also lead to his downfall. However, I do think it's entirely possible after a little bit of thinking, after kind of mulling things over a little bit, John may realize, he realizes they're being skeptical of the authorities. Remembering Blyke mentioned that he was in low tier districts a little bit. John even commented, "You're a really bad liar, man." So he could most likely figure out everything that the trio has been up to being vigilantes. I think it's entirely possible. I also wouldn't mind, I have been waiting for that conversation specifically with John and Remy more because she was the first one to do it. And also, the comment John made about Ray about, fuck your brother, he can go to hell for all I care. I have been waiting for that conversation for John to realize everything, I've been waiting for that conversation between him and Remy. And, now that Blyke's also became a vigilante, John, also talking to Blyke about it. I think that's a really interesting conversation that I have been waiting for a long time. Anyway, that's it. That's it for post points. But that's going to be it for this episode, guys. Honestly, just because William is in this episode alone and, the stuff that he does bring to this episode, level 9. Level 9 easy. Level 9 easy, you guys. William is such a great character and such a great dad. But this episode was just, really nice. It was very nice to see this episode happen. So that's going to be it for today, guys. I hope to see you guys back here for the reaction to UnOrdinary episode 270. We're on episode 270 now. Jeez. But I'm excited to see what happens next. I think, conversation's not necessarily over. I don't think these conversations should end right now. So I hope to see you guys back here later tonight. And as always, see you, Space Cowboy.